Hi there. I'm so sorry I can't be with you today to participate in the Forgiveness Congress because I'd really love to be speaking to you in person about radical forgiveness and the freedom that it offers to anyone who tries it. But the dates just didn't work out for me, I'm afraid. So I thought I would try to make a contribution anyway by offering a short video that might give you some idea of what radical forgiveness is and why it's fundamentally different to conventional forgiveness. Hi, I'm Colin Tipping, and my humble claim to fame is that I am the author of the book Radical Forgiveness, a copy of which you might find translated into Italian, of course, lying about the place during the Congress. At least I hope you do. If you do, I hope you'll snap it up and in some quieter moment find it a pleasurable and interesting read. As you may be able to tell, I'm English, but I've been living in the United States since 1984. My wife is American and we now live half the time in the US and half the time in England. Now this is nice because all my children and grandchildren live in the UK, so we get to see them more than if we lived all the time in America. Anyway, over the past 20 plus years, I've taught the radical forgiveness method all around the world, connecting with thousands of people across the world who, just like most of you probably, were experiencing the same kind of problems that we all have to deal with in life. And again, like many of you, they were looking for some kind of workable solution to all the emotionally based problems that they've been dealing with for years, most likely, and without much success, most probably too. Well, I'm proud to say that most, if not all, found it not in traditional forgiveness, for the reasons I'm about to explain, but in radical forgiveness, especially those who had some unresolved issue or grievance that they had been holding on to for years with a vice-like grip, as if to let it go would bring the world crashing down on them. So imagine their relief when they tried it and all it brought them was freedom and peace. So, how did this come about? Well, when I immigrated to America in 1984, I became certified as a hypnotherapist. And then, for some reason, I began to attract people who had cancer or had just survived cancer and wanted to avoid a recurrence. I didn't know why, because it was not in my family or in my own experience. At about the same time, I developed an interest in the topic of forgiveness, and then discovered a lot of research that clearly showed that an inability to forgive was a common factor in cancer patients and was strongly implicated in the causation of the disease. So, my wife and I formed a non-profit organization and began doing retreats for cancer patients with the idea of teaching them how to forgive. However, it soon became clear that conventional forgiveness was not going to work. It takes too long, it's universally considered to be very difficult to do, and few people ever achieve it. So, we had to develop a form of forgiveness which was easy, quick, and a simple step-by-step process that did not require any therapy, something that the typical cancer patient had avoided all their lives, preferring instead to bury their pain and deny that they had any. Anyway, that's when and how radical forgiveness was born. It was purely out of necessity, at least in the beginning. And I went on then to write the book in 1997 and began doing regular workshops in 1998 based on radical forgiveness. It quickly became recognized as a powerful modality for healing all sorts of emotional problems, especially childhood wounds, the pain of past traumas, residual grievances, regrets, hurts, and so on. It then became a much lauded antidote to victim consciousness, and, as such, gave freedom to a lot of people in many countries around the world. The book is now published in about 20 different languages and is a bestseller in many countries. As time has gone on, though, radical forgiveness has come to be seen as something more than just a healing process. People now regard it as a practical philosophy of life, one that is based on a number of metaphysical assumptions that offer an expanded view of reality, a new awareness of the purpose of life. It has become an approach to life that is more in alignment with who we really are and why we are here. It completely collapses the idea that life is largely meaningless, or just a series of random events that just happen for no other reason than we were in the right or wrong place at the right or wrong time, or that we are merely the unwitting victims of circumstances. It brings us to the realization that we are not only responsible for creating our lives moment by moment, but that we have the power to actually create the lives we want to live. It allows us to see that there is a purpose behind everything that happens to us. It's not only radical, it's revolutionary. More than mere forgiveness, then, it has become the basis for a way of thinking, acting, and being that permeates every aspect of one's life. It gives us a way to deal with all the challenges of everyday life in a new and satisfying way. But more than that even, we have come to see it as a way of transforming the consciousness of the planet. As we shift our consciousness and begin living from the radical forgiveness paradigm, we make a significant contribution to the raising of the consciousness of the entire human race, one person at a time. As you can imagine, all this is very exciting. But what exactly is the concept of radical forgiveness and how does it work? Well, let me show you how it works. There are basically 5 stages we go through to experience radical forgiveness. The first 3 of which are the same, more or less, as conventional forgiveness. Telling the story, feeling the feelings, collapsing the story. Now, these are the same as traditional forgiveness. Can't go any further than this because in traditional forgiveness there remains the belief that something bad happened. Even though we want to forgive, we still regard ourselves as a victim. But in step 4 is where it becomes revolutionary. And this is the radical forgiveness step, and we call it reframing the story. And by way of explanation, let me pose it to you as a question. When you look back in your life to some event that happened to you, that at the time seemed really terrible and you wished it wasn't happening, maybe you think to yourself, I think that happened for a reason. Yes? Well, with radical forgiveness, we go one giant step further and we say that everything happens for a reason and there are no exceptions to the rule. It's all or nothing. It's like you can't be a little bit pregnant. You either are or you're not. And it's the same with radical forgiveness. It's all or nothing. Now, before I forget, step 5 is where we do something to integrate this new way of looking at what happened, like doing breath work or meditating, writing, or doing the worksheets. So, in a nutshell then, the radical forgiveness concept is that true forgiveness is recognizing that, looking at it from the spiritual big picture standpoint, nothing wrong ever happened. What took place was divinely guided and for the highest good for all concerned. And once we arrive at that conclusion, we realize that there is nothing to forgive. Now, of course, that can seem like a very abstract idea, and at one level it is. For it to work, however, we have to bring it down to earth and make it simple and practical, immediately useful to anyone, no matter who they are, as a tool for dealing with the day-to-day problems of everyday life. And that's how we teach it. And it works. We have 20 years of proof that it does. Not only does it have an effect on the person forgiving, but it has an effect on the actual situation itself. Everything changes. But what we have found over the years is that if we just try to do this process in our heads, it doesn't work. The mind just jumps in and stops the process, and it tells us that it's a crazy idea, which of course it is from a rational standpoint. To stop that happening, we've developed some simple tools like a radical forgiveness worksheet that allows us to go around the mind and deal directly with the higher self. That's the part of us that knows the truth and is connected to that which we call universal intelligence. And that's when the magic happens. Filling in a worksheet enables us to connect with spiritual truth and to our own destiny. They help us come to a point where we realize that what happened to us actually happened for us, and that it was meant to happen that way. Finally, for those of a more analytical mind, it will help you to know that it's not just some fuzzy new age feel-good experience, but that it has a sound intellectual framework firmly rooted in quantum physics and psychological theory, as well as in spiritual law. But the real test, and the only one that matters, is, does it work? I invite you to try it for yourself and see if it works for you. So thank you for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful Congress.